Bevan, what is the current state of homelessness in Australia?
Well, the recent census confirmed that it's getting worse in almost every age category. And in Victoria, 2/3 of people approaching specialist homelessness services last year were coming back for a second or a third or a fourth time.
And is there a typical description of someone who's needing this type of support?
No, there's no stereotypical person who will experience homelessness. We see it in young people, increasingly in people who are working, insecure, underemployment, casualised employment. We're seeing the growth of the working homeless, and we're also seeing older women over the age of 55 sleeping in cars and coming to us after they've exhausted all their resources, approaching us for the first time with assistance.
The working homeless is a relatively new phenomenon.
Yes, and I think it's been associated with the increase in inequality that we've seen over the last 20 years and the erosion of workers' rights or minimum rates of pay.
It's quite staggering given we're at 30-year low on unemployment, that you talk about any employer, they can't find staff, and that if we've got working poor in this situation, heaven help us when unemployment starts to rise.
And it's a feature of cost of living generally and rent price inflation. So a lack of supply in the housing market, but local governments need to work to make sure we get the affordable housing built in communities that need it. With the increasing suburbanisation of homelessness, that's not just found in the honeypot of the CBD. We need more below market housing that people can afford to rent everywhere. And some advocates would say if the ownership arrangements change, the property's still in the market, but we just need more supply. Do you think build to rent is an answer that Australia needs to embrace?
I think it's absolutely something that we should be doing. Anything that increases supply has to have a trickle-down effect. Now, the typical build to rent accommodation is not going to be affordable housing. And so I'd like to see government work out a way to incentivise build to rent and affordable at the same time. It's a great way to solve it. The superannuation funds are ready to fund it. The builders are ready to build it. One of the problems is finding sites. And again, this is where government gets in the way of itself. Getting planning permission to construct these type of premises is very hard. I talk to our customers and they just can't find the sites to build. They're ready to go. It's right across the country now. Housing shortages everywhere, particularly with COVID, with a lot of people buying second homes, doing sea change, tree change. The supply of housing outside the capital cities is really poor. We've also got to bust the myth that this is due to bad choices for the people who are suffering it, when in fact it's usually events that have occurred to them outside their control.
The positive was that through COVID, we saw an outbreak of empathy. We understood that our own health was intimately connected to the health of the person next to us. So we want to build on that through our Melbourne Zero movement to see that we can frame a task for all Melburnians to want to be a world-leading city in ending homelessness, and that we bring to bear those hyper-local solutions with local governments and state governments and Commonwealth financiers to build the social housing, deliver the support programs we need.
Is there a role model internationally that you aspire to for Melbourne?
Well, currently we would say Dublin is doing pretty well, but basically the solutions to homelessness involve more social housing that people can afford to rent and less low-income rent stress for people. So it's a function of the social safety net and the way housing markets operate. We urgently need more social housing. 50 years ago, in 1973, 13.1% of all dwellings built were built by the government and offered at below market rates. Last year, it was 1.1%. We need to ask ourselves, what role does government have in the provision of housing?
And what can businesses like REA do to help in this regard?
Well, I think REA, by simply being part of this conversation, part of the Melbourne Zero movement, lending your support through practical philanthropy that supports our rapid rehousing of people who are experiencing homelessness, both in deeds and in words, sending a message to other organisations that you need to take a stand on how we want Australia to be in the future. Having a strong position on wanting Australia to be a world leading, tackling homelessness in a way that we can sort of be proud of, rather than sort of slipping back and inevitably going in the direction of some of those American cities, is something that I think all businesses could reasonably attach themselves to.
Thanks, Bevan. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much.